In this video, I'll help answer the question, is Microsoft stock a good buy, hold, or sell? We'll take a look at 4 things. Number 1, how does Microsoft make money? Number 2, we'll talk about the latest news. Number 3, we'll take a look at the ratings in Tykr. And then number 4, I'll let you know what I plan on doing with this stock. And just so you know, if you want to see the ratings on this stock and other stocks, you can join Tykr for free. All right, let's get started on point 1, which is how does Microsoft make money? Well, a lot of people are familiar with this company, but this happens to be one of my favorite stocks. It's not my highest flying stock in my portfolio, but I like it because of the number of revenue streams. So get this, some of those streams include Microsoft Office 365, Windows, Azure, SQL Server, Dynamics 365, which is like a large enterprise ERP. Essentially, you can do a lot of work with it, like manage employee onboarding. You can do project management, you can create workflows. It's a pretty complex software and it's quite expensive. Then you have Xbox, Bing, Surface Laptop, and a whole list of other products. But to circle back to the first product, that being Microsoft Office 365, that is one of the stickiest SaaS platforms on the face of the planet. Here's a scenario for you. So let's say you got a company that wants to cut costs. You're never going to hear the CEO or the CFO say, you know what we should do? We should save money and cut our Microsoft Office licenses. That will most likely never happen. You can pretty much crash a company if you were to do that. So good on Microsoft. It took a long time, but again, they have one of the stickiest SaaS platforms on the market. All right, related to how they make money, I always like to talk about customers if companies show what customers they work with. So here you go. Some of the customers that use Azure include Walmart, eBay, AT&T, and Shell. Then some of the customers that use OpenAI include Adobe and Meta. And then some of the customers that use Microsoft Office 365 include Amazon and Walmart. And get this, the latest news, Amazon is now paying Microsoft $1 billion for 1 million licenses of Office 365. That's $1,000 per year per user. Talk about a solid SaaS business. All right, on to the latest news. So they beat their earnings estimate, which is a great sign. However, they did have lower guidance or lower target with sales. It's just, again, I've mentioned this in other videos. When companies mention guidance or sales projections, if it's not exactly what analysts on Wall Street want to hear, the share price can sell off. And that's exactly what happened here with Microsoft. So I'm not stressed. I'm seeing this a lot right now. There's a lot of overreactions causing a sell-off just based on guidance. But again, I tend to ignore that. All right, let's keep going. There's also a strong adoption of Azure, especially with AI being incorporated with Azure. And then the last point here is Microsoft is increasing their dividend. That's usually a really good sign that the financials are healthy. All right, let's move on to the next step, which is looking at the ratings in Tykr. Now, I always like to say this. If you are interested, you can go to tykr.com, you can go to education, and then down to calculations, and you can see the open source calculations of Tykr. If you're interested, you can dive into that, just see the math behind all the calculations we're about to go through. So we're going to walk through the 7. There is an easy button. You can literally go to the 7 on each stock and see what that score is. We're not going to do that right now. We want to kind of walk through this manually so you understand where we're coming from. And on that note, let's get started. So what we're looking for are stocks that are on sale. Only about 15% of stocks make it to on sale. In this case, Microsoft is watch. In order to get to watch, you need a score of 50 or higher and a margin of safety of 50% or higher. So we can see here the score, that's the overall financial strength of a stock, is at 74, but the margin of safety is at 1%. And we'll take a look at why that is in just a second. Then we move on to the middle. We can see the 4M is at 82. If you can get above 80, that's really good. The 4Ms, just to take a look at that, you have the math part, which is that summary score margin of safety. Then you have the meaning, that's how the business makes money. Then you have the moat, that's how it compares to other businesses in the same sector and industry. And then you have the track record of the management being the 4th M. All right, the next screen shows what we're going for. You should have high confidence in this stock if it's 80 to 100, moderate if it's 60 to 79, and low confidence 59 or lower. So we fall in that high range. That, again, is a very good sign. All right, we're going to keep going here. Scrolling down, we want to look at the 5-year chart. Now, we know that past performance does not guarantee future results, but we like stocks that consistently beat the market, especially over 5 years. And a good number to remember is 80%. Typically, the S&P 500 returns about 80% over 5 years, while in this case, Microsoft is 127, so definitely beating the market. All right, we're almost done. Let's take a look at the financials. We can see that slow and steady growth on the revenue, and the same thing with the EPS. And circling back to the margin of safety, you're going to have a higher margin of safety when you have a steeper incline with the EPS growth rate. We can see this is increasing, but it's kind of slow and steady. If it was much higher, like in NVIDIA, you would see that higher margin of safety. So that's how we calculate the margin of safety. We use that EPS growth rate. That's essentially cutting through the noise and looking right at the number one most important line on the income statement, which is EPS, essentially profits of the company. All right, so EPS, we are seeing this increase quarter over quarter. So we're probably going to get a point here. We see 367 up to 373. There we go. But again, it's not very steep. So that's why that margin of safety is at 1%. One more thing to look at. Let's go to the earnings calendar, and then we'll take a look at the 7 and see what our score is. But we can see here, yes, we did beat the estimate. You can see estimate was 367 and then reported 413. And you can see the track record in time here. I'm just curious to see when Microsoft last missed. Looks like July of 22. All right, so I'm going to take a guess here. I think we're going to get a 5 out of 7 if we click on the 7. And there we go, 5 out of 7. That's pretty good. The goal is to get exactly that 5, 6, or 7 on the 7. So this leads to what am I doing with this stock? Well, I like that there's a pullback right now. In fact, let's go to the 3-month on the chart. And you can see here, we are down about 3% over the last 3 months. That's great. I am using this opportunity to buy more. Again, like I said in the beginning, this is not my highest flying stock. It's not producing the biggest returns, but this is beating the market. And for me, it's a safe stock. They pay a dividend, which is kind of like icing on the cake, but this circles back to the revenue streams. They have a ton of revenue streams. And those of you that are building a business, the more revenue streams you put into place, the more resilient your business will become. What that means is essentially, let's say one revenue stream pulls back or slows down. Well, you have other revenue streams to keep the business thriving. All right, so there's my overview of Microsoft. If you want to see the ratings on Microsoft and other stocks, you can join Tykr for free. If you stayed to the end of this video, thank you for doing that. Please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Referrals from friends are one of the best ways to build a business. Of course, don't buy and sell stocks based solely on what you're here. Only buy and sell stocks that align with your own personal financial goals. Thanks for checking out this video. We'll see you next one. Bye for now.